Awesome. Hi, this is Kathy Davis. Welcome to the January 26, 2023 Inspiring Author Conversations. Today, we'll be speaking with Connie Whitman about being on podcasts to promote and drive more book sales. Before we welcome Connie, I just want to remind everybody of a few logistic details. The call is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the YouTube video within about 48 hours after the call. Your attendance at these meetings serves as your permission to be seen in the recordings. Please mute yourself on your end and find your chat button down at the very bottom of the screen. If you have any questions throughout the call, please, I see quick little note from Julie. Thank you. Give me a second, Julie. I can't read and talk and punch a button at the same time. We promise to end the call around noon or shortly thereafter. Our inspiring author theme for 2023 is building a bigger business buzz. Our intention is to help you grow your business by sharing information and welcoming guests who are either an inspiring author themselves or someone who helps to inspire authors by sharing knowledge, new ideas, opportunities, and wisdom. And by the way, our guest today, Connie Whitman, happens to be both of those, both an inspiring author and someone with lots of wisdom. Known for her high energy, passionate, heart-centered and enthusiastic approach to sales, teaching, and coaching, Connie has been the CEO of Changing the Sales Game for 20 plus years. She helps business owners, leaders, and sales teams build powerhouse organizations. Connie is a 3-time #1 international best-selling author, including her book ESP, Easy Sales Process, 7 Steps to Sales Success, speaker and podcast host. Her inspired teaching, transformational tools, and content ensure that business owners and salespeople grow their revenue streams through enhanced communication skills. She's thrilled to share inspiring content on her international podcast, not one, but 2. One is called Changing the Sales Game. The second is Enlightenment of Change. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you, Kath. Very excited to be here.
We've known each other 4 or 5 years. Everything's like pre-pandemic or since pandemic.
Yeah, since pandemic. Yeah.
And we launched your first book just before the whole pandemic thing hit, like about a year before.
Actually, it was July of 2020, right after the pandemic. Mm-hmm.
Okay, right after the announcement.
I knew it to you.
Woven in there somewhere. Yeah. So what prompted you to do 2 podcasts, not just one? You jumped in both feet first.
Yes, I do everything extra. So it's a habit, right? But I've actually been podcasting for 11 years. So I started podcasting. Actually, the head of it was Web Talk Radio was the platform I happen to use. There's many out there. But anyway, the owner of that sent me an email 11 years ago, and I really thought I was getting punked or spammed. And I remember I called my husband at work and I read the email and I go, this dude wants me to host the show. What do I know about hosting a podcast? I don't even know what a podcast is. And so my husband said, well, why don't you reach out and see if it's for real? So I did, and this was interesting, and this is an important question I think we should all ask ourselves. So, but I said to him, like, why me? I don't know what a podcast is. I'm older, at the time I was 49, 50, and this was his response. I like your digital presence. So the kicker here too was I didn't know what a digital presence was, and I didn't know I even had one. So be mindful, because we all have a digital preference or presence, and you really do want to know what's showing up. But the long and short of why he reached out to me is I was always a working mom. And then I was a business owner I started my business when I was 39 and my kids were little, 1 and 4. So that I was a working mom, business owner, female. And I had this very spiritual side in my posts and stuff. So I have a little woo. So on Business Meets Woo, he thought that was fascinating. And he thought that people would resonate with me. And that was 11 years ago. Then Kath, when we promoted my book in 2020, with everything going on, and again, change, right? Everybody in this room, change is here always. And so during COVID, everything, my business prior to COVID was live. I spoke live, I networked live, I trained live, I did everything live. And then the world stopped, my income stopped. What do? You reinvent. Like many of you, I'm sure this is a same story. And I hired a coach because this whole digital world, this technology, because I'm older, was very foreign. So I did hire a coach. And he said to me, Kathy, after we published the book, you know, you need to do Changing the Sales Game podcast. I had rebranded my business. I was like, what? Like I do one, to do two. And honestly, it's not that big of a deal. So if anyone is ever thinking about hosting a podcast, we could certainly have another conversation about that. It's easier than you think, and it's not as time consuming as you think, but the ripple effect from it is fabulous. So again, that's kind of my story of the podcasting world, of why I entered it.
Now, I can see the tip top of your microphone there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you record from your home and home office?
Yes.
And do you have any kind of special equipment?
So here's the thing. Do not, if you do, let me back up. Whether you're a podcast host or you're looking to be a podcast guest, invest in a good microphone. The podcast host, whoever they are, will so appreciate, because you're adding better quality to their show. And it's funny because now some podcast hosts are actually in the, there's applications usually you have to fill out, what questions, your bio, headshot, all that kind of stuff. They'll say, do you have a quality microphone? Now, I'm not saying that your computer microphone is a bad thing. It just, there's distance. So you can hear the distance in the recording. So my microphone I bought, it's old now. Again, it's like 10 years old. I've spent $200. Here's why. You definitely do not have to spend that much on a mic. You could buy something cheaper. If you happen to be in a noisy place, and I know, Cheryl, you were saying you have the puppy at home, the dog, if they can bark, you don't want that distraction when you're invited to be on a show. And yeah, you could put your dog away, but if you can hear the barking, or when you're scheduled, you know, the lawn folks are going to come and mow the lawn. My microphone has noise canceling mechanics in it. So
Yeah.
even because my office is on the first floor, when they mow and I record on Fridays in the summer, I can't avoid it. No one can hear because it's noise canceling. It only picks up the voice.
That's
So
awesome.
yes, if you're in a quiet place where you live alone, there's nobody around, I wouldn't worry so much about that. The only thing is when you take, some microphones are very, very sensitive. So I do recommend reading some reviews, because if you're one that takes a deep breath, it will be amplified depending on the microphone. So again, mine is noise canceling. It really zeroes in on the voice. The other thing, they have these, you have to buy special plugs and connection station. USB, make sure it has a USB. You could plug it into your computer. Keep it as simple as possible. And the other thing is, you say I have this little guy here. It just hooks onto my microphone. It's like a little screen thingy. This helps soften if you do, you know, those kinds of, if you do like that, if you smack your lips, this will soften the sound a little bit. Again, I think it was like $10. So not a ton of money. And the last piece of equipment I will tell you to get is an O-ring. Up here, I have an O-ring so that it's behind my computer, but it shines so that I don't have shadows. And the coloring and everything is like, you're not dark on one side and light on the other. It just gives you better lighting, which will be appreciated by the host as well.
And the fun part is I don't see those O's in your glasses. I've been on online calls before where the speaker has the O-ring right in front of their computer, and they have on glasses, and you can see these white O's reflecting in both of their eyes.
And I will tell you, when I'm a guest on a show, I'm just wearing my glasses so I could see you guys. But when I'm a guest on the show, it's just the host and I take my glasses off so that you don't have that reflection. Or you can buy the reflective glasses that are blue light or whatever. So yeah, just, you really don't want that reflection on the glasses. It does look funny. It's distracting.
Yeah. So I do want to remind everybody, if you do have questions, please be sure and drop them into the chat box. And we're a small enough group today also that if you want to just use your button at the bottom under reactions, and you can hit the raise your hand button in that section, and I'll make sure I'm watching for raised hands, comments, and things in the chat box. So how can I use a podcast to tell people about my book and drive book sales and or help promote any other kind of webinars, or how does that all work? How is it connected? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so this is important. If you are on a podcast and they listen to you through Apple and you don't have a link or a free gift, they're not getting on your email list. Okay. So a couple of things here. There's a couple of moving parts, but this is really important because you want to leverage these opportunities to the maximum, right? And also remember, when you're on a podcast, everybody doesn't listen the week it launches. Some people might find the podcast that you're on 6 months from now. And then what they do, if they find the podcast, they like it, they'll listen to those downloads, right, later on. So here's the thing. You want to make sure that you have some type of email place to put people. I know a lot of people have MailChimp. I think do your research. If you have no, how many, let me ask you this. How many of you have an email list? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, good. How many of you don't have an email list at all? Okay. Do something, Pat, find something that's cheap or free to start, because as you build your list with getting on podcasts with your book and promoting your book, you want to make sure you capture those people because they bought your book or they're downloading when you're on the podcast. Let's say a free gift might be a free chapter in the book and with really good tips. And then they go and they buy the book. Well, if they go to Amazon or they just listen on Apple, you're not capturing that client, that potential client. And the reality is if they downloaded your book from the link from the show and then they bought your book, you have no communication with them. They're probably your ideal client. So you want to make sure you get them. Pat, I hope that makes sense. You want to get them on your email list. And that's why you, every time you're on a podcast, have some type of free gift and have the link that the show host can promote. And then no matter when the person listens, they have that free gift from you. The other thing I highly recommend is the link you create. A couple of different ways to do it. Keep it simple. I would create a link tree. And I know, Kathy, we just did this with my book that I'm sponsoring that's coming out in February. Linktree is a beautiful tool because you can upload and change those links anytime, any day, a year from now. So if you're on my show, let's say today, and someone listens a year from now and your link is not active anymore, that's okay. They'll still go to your Linktree link, and whatever new book you have or whatever new program you're offering, or if you're speaking somewhere and you're trying to get people to sign up, it's all there right on your Linktree. So when we did the book for February, I said, let's do Linktree and do a QR code. This way it becomes a live business card, the book. People buy it a year from now, they'll still have all of our active contact LinkedIn. If let's say I go on TikTok, I can add that. That'd be added a year from now when people click that link. So keep it simple. Make sure you have a link that you give the host and ask them to put it in the show notes. And then make sure you offer some kind of free gift on that link tree. Put it towards the top if you can, maybe your email, your website, and then the free gift. That's how I would organize it. And then that will get them on your email list, and then you can nurture them from there.
It's funny you're talking about, yeah, you were talking about Linktree, and I'm glad you just confirmed it because I was on a podcast just before Christmas and I used Linktree. And the way I described it to someone the other day is a lot of us on here probably used to have the old card Rolodex things that were on our addresses that were on our desk, and you'd write somebody's name and maybe on the back that would be their spouse's name, their kid's name, their dog's name, little incidental things on the back. Well, Linktree is in my mind, a digital version of that. So I had like 4 different downloads listed and the links to that. And I had our website, I had my email address, how I want them to connect with me. I had Facebook, I had LinkedIn, the social media that I wanted, and I had our YouTube channel. So at some point, if those links ever change, I can go back into that link tree and make those edits. And whoever still has my Linktree link, which I think is Kathy L. Davis, You just go to Linktree and then type in Kathy L. Davis and I come up. We'll still be able to get the most current version of whenever they go to that Linktree list. So and thank you, Connie, for telling us about that, because it's come in handy. We're using it on other books that were for other authors also.
And this is why these lunch and learns are important, because somebody taught me about Linktree. And then of course I saw the usefulness for a book, because people buy the book now, and I know my book, Half from 2020, some of those links are not active. Like I've rebranded, my website's different. It ports over for you, right? I had somebody set that up for me, but it becomes really complicated. And then this way, the Linktree, it's all in one place. And I'll share this with you. Some of my guests are like, well, can you put my LinkedIn and my Facebook and my Twitter? No, I'm not putting all that in the show notes. It looks messy, it's distracting, and it looks unprofessional. So the Linktree, I'll tell them, get a Linktree, put whatever you want in your Linktree. Now I'm only sharing that one link, but it looks really good. And then when I tell them the benefits, they go, oh my God, I'm going to use this all the time going forward. So unless we share this information, we don't know it's out there. I'm sorry, Kath.
No, it's fine. There's a free version. So
yeah.
And I mean, that's the one I use. So far I've not figured out why I need to pay to upgrade. One of these days it might hit me, but right now I'm just using the free version and it's working out well.
Me too. Free version.
So how do you know what to talk about on your podcast? Where do you get your content?
Me personally? So this is how I do it. Different hosts do it differently, but I'll just share with you so that you can ask these questions to the host if you're unsure. Or I am extremely organized. That's who I am. But I've been on shows where I email the host, and I say, do you need my headshot? Do you need my bio? Like, how do you introduce your guests? Like, to me, these are logical things that I do with every show. And they're like, wing it. You just give me a one sentence about you. And this is what goes through my head. Houston, we have a problem. This is not going to go well because I'm so organized. But let me take a step back. So what I do is I ask my guests for a headshot, their professional headshot. I record video. So not only do I have the audio file, but I create a thumbnail for my guests to use in their promotion, and it goes on my YouTube channel. So I ask for a headshot. I ask for a short bio, 100 words. So create a really short bio, because you can imagine on a podcast, if it takes me 5 minutes to read your bio, people have already clicked out. They haven't even heard you speak. So get it down to that 75 to 100 words. The host will appreciate that as well. And then the other thing I do is I do ask my guests for questions. I ask for 7 or 8 questions. Doesn't mean that I'm going to use them all, but it grounds the conversation. So I'm honoring my guest and what their zone of genius is, because I'm meeting people for the first time often. I don't know what their zone of genius is. So those questions help me ground. And then from there, I will ask follow-up questions that aren't necessarily listed, but then I know the guest could answer, because I don't ever want a guest to go, oh, I don't know how to answer that. So by creating some questions, you help the host ground the conversation and then go organically from there. So most times I don't use all the questions, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you estimate, how many podcast recordings have you done?
Holy smokes. My own, Enlightenment of Change. I've done well over 500 episodes. Changing the Sales Game, I have about 120 done, since I started. Me being on a podcast, me as the guest, hundreds. I don't even know anymore. I'm on a lot. Yeah, I'm on a lot.
How do you find people that would like to have you as a guest?
So there's
they find you.
They find me. So here's another thing. I make zero effort finding guests. So networking, I'll be in a networking room. Last week, I was a mentor for a program for one of my colleagues. And one of the people that were there, I loved, it was a husband and wife team. They do a lot of media and video. loved their energy, loved them. So I chatted with them privately and I said, I'd love to have you on my show. Here's my email, connect with me. I'd like to have you as a guest because I know there'll be good energy, good content. So that's one way. Additionally, I have PR agencies, podcasting agencies that will send me authors, etc. Be careful. They could be very costly, and you can find podcast lists in your, like if you're health and wellness, you want to get on health and wellness podcast, right? Because that's going to be your ideal audience. For me, it's sales and business. So if you're in the business realm, I would be a good podcast, right? So you're going to have to do a little bit of networking to get on podcasts. Here's the good news. More people than not that are in business, they're doing podcasting now because it's a really good revenue producer. And it's a great way to build what we call the know, like, trust factor. And then people buy from you quicker because they see you, they feel you, they hear you. They're like, wow, she's brilliant. Or wow, that was a great tip. So you're not pitching during the show. The podcast is for information, valuable information. Think about that. It lets people really see who you are and what your brilliance is and how it might be able to help them, all within 20, 30, 45 minutes, depending on the length of the show.
It's the new version of creating a commercial for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a much more fun way and interactive way than, hey, buy from me because I'm the coolest,
Yeah.
like that's so obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like we're doing now, we're having a conversation, but some people are like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Oh my God, I didn't think of that. Great idea. I could do that. Valuable information. At some point, you get to know me. You might buy from me a year, 10 years from now, who knows? But it starts with hearing you live, and that builds that know, like, trust really fast.
Right. We've got a quick question. If we go back to the questions that people list for you, do you also provide the answers to your questions for the host?
Nope. No, you don't want to do that. It's number one, it's overwhelming as a host because I have to read through all of that. And here's another reason why. Let me take another step back. Ask your host if you can share questions and if they'd like the answer. I'm telling you, 90% of the time they're going to say no, the questions are fine. Don't put the answers. The other reason, because I'm a curious person, and when I have you as a guest, right, when I have my guests on the show, I want to be surprised. So when I ask the question and you're sharing that information and I'm really hearing it for the first time, whatever that cool thing is that you're doing, I'm like, oh my God, a situation I just encountered was, and it creates enthusiasm. It creates a genuine response from me that isn't faked. So I don't recommend putting the answers in. You want people to be curious and ask you follow-up questions to dig a little bit deeper.
Now, we were talking earlier about, the free offers, and then we kind of got sidetracked with Linktree, but can you explain what a lead magnet is?
Yeah, good question. I didn't mean to jump over that. So lead magnet could be as simple as a free chapter in the book. You could do a downloadable PDF for them. Another one would be, let's say that, like, I have my 7-step sales process, right? That was my book that Kathy published. So I have like a little blueprint. It's a circle and it goes through what each of the 7 steps are, how it flows, and what each of them means, right? Like being prepared. Well, what does that mean? And I have a little side thing. So it's a little blueprint. People love that stuff. I know people who are podcast experts, they'll do their free gift, right? Or the link is what equipment to buy. And they actually put the Amazon links to the equipment. So it's like a little cheat sheet. If you have, let's say your health and wellness, and you have basic tips for gaining good habits of eating, maybe putting their Vitamixer on the counter and leaving it out. I don't know, but you have like a little checklist. Another great, good lead magnet. Lead magnet should be quick read, easily digestible, and immediate download so that they have access to it. Some people will use ebooks that are 70 pages long. I don't recommend that because nobody's going to read it. They're really not going to get to know who you are. So you want something quick, down and dirty, get it in their hands, let them look at it and go, ooh, I would like more information on this, right? It's that building that curiosity.
Yeah, I always tell people, don't tell everything you know. Don't try and say it all in one sheet. And if you can keep it to one side, that's even better.
Yes.
And because you want them to reach out for more information. The Now, how can you use that information? They've got my lead magnet. They've got my, top 10 tips for your best book cover ever. Then what do I do now? I have their email address. What's the next thing? What do I do with that?
So here's the thing, and this is not my zone of genius, kids. So I can talk, not really great at writing. I mean, I can write because I've written books, but it's not my zone of genius. I don't love sitting down and writing like 10 email sequences. So I opt in, right? Somebody opts in, and I actually hired someone, a copywriter, who's part of our book path that we're launching. She's amazing. But I hired her, and she created 11 emails for a very specific workshop I offer that wasn't converting. And I knew my emails were bad because I wrote them. There's this whole psychology and logic. And I don't know what that is because I don't want to study it. I don't want to figure it out. I don't have the time. It was cheaper and easier for me to hire her. If you are a really good writer, you're all authors, then create an email sequence. It's called a welcoming email sequence where you say, hey, did you get my free checklist? I hope you're using it. If not, here's the link again, put it again. And then just say, maybe at the end, you give another tip based on, say, if you looked at tip number 2, how I execute that is blah, 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 blah. So you put another little tip in the email. And then if you'd like to have a conversation with me, make sure there's what's called a call to action. You're asking them to do something. It could be to get on your calendar. It could be to answer a question, to say the call to action might be, which tip did you find the most valuable and have you used it yet? I'd love a response. Email me back. So, and then you might have 10, 11, depending on the complexity of your free gifts or your program that you're nurturing them to buy at the end. Then my sequence is about 11 or 12 emails, but it's because my ticket item at the end is $2,000. So you can't do that in 2 emails and think people are going to go from getting a free gift to spending $2,000. Human nature, we don't work that way. I have to prove myself. I have to honor them. I have to get to know them. They have to get to know me. It all takes time. But if you don't even they get on your email list and you do nothing with it, you're leaving money on the table. You're not even giving them an opportunity to get to know you better. And you might be exactly what they're looking for. So you want to create that email sequence. Did I answer your question, Kath?
Yes. And when you're trying to organize and keep all this straight in your email system, that's when you use something that you mentioned earlier, MailChimp, or we happen to use Constant Contact.
Yeah, I use
There's
Active
a lot of them
Campaign.
out there. Yeah. There's a lot of them out there that can, and just kind of ask around and see what other people are using and who likes what best. Yeah. And any other questions we've got going on? I know we've had a couple of people that had to jump on and jump off. So I've done my podcast. I've been a guest. What do I do after that? How can I magnify the fact that I was on this podcast? What do I do?
Yeah, and here's the thing, there is work involved for the host as well, because I have to write show notes, I have to upload the files, I have a producer who gets it up for me. Again, I used to do everything, and then as money comes in, I could hire people to do these mundane things. But for you absolutely want to promote it, because if you get good downloads because you promote it and a lot of people know you, even if you don't have a big email list, but you're active on Facebook, your people respond really well because they kind of know you. And then they get downloads on the podcast. The host might ask you back to do a series or to do a follow-up interview. So you definitely want to promote. I would put it on my website. I would post it on every social media platform. And if you don't have a lot of content, you could transcribe the podcast. Sometimes the hosts will do, like I have transcriptions of mine. Usually the host will, but if not, you can have it transcribed free. There's AI things out there that could do the transcriptions for no charge. And then you could create a blog post from it. You could take quotes from it and post them on social media. So you want to repurpose it as much as you can, because again, it spotlights who you are and what your zone of genius is, right? What you bring to the table, but it also supports the podcast itself. So what happens is if other podcast hosts see you doing that, they might also come come to you and say, hey, I see you're a great promoter. You were on this show. I see how you've supported that podcast. I'd love to have you on my show. I think my audience would be a good fit for you. Again, it's this little ripple effect, but you got to do it, right? You're being on the show is the beginning. It's not going to create all of this great stuff without you doing nothing with it. Did I answer your question, Kath?
You sure did. Yeah, thank you. So what is this is where we get to, what is your words of wisdom that if I have no clue where to start, and perhaps I've not even ever been on somebody's podcast, where do I start? What is the words of wisdom to get us going and maybe help us take that first step?
So first thing I would do is Apple is where most downloads are. Just, it is what it is. I wouldn't worry about Spotify and all the other one. The host will have them out there. But I would, if I were you, I would go to Apple, and there's a search bar on the Apple platform. Just search for me. Let's say I would be sales, because that's where I want it. Sales and marketing, maybe. And then all the podcasts come up. Then I can listen. I could get a vibe. I can look at some of the numbers, how many testimonials, how many ratings and reviews. So if you're just starting out, I would try to get on a newer podcast. They're going to be hungry for guests, so the door will be open. Like if you try to get on Joe Rogan, you ain't getting on Joe Rogan. Like I wouldn't start there. But if you could do Google search, again, look at the number of ratings and reviews. If it's on the lower side, I would reach out. If their listeners are a good match for you, I would reach out to them and just write a lovely email saying, hey, listen, I've been listening to your show, and be specific. I love the episode with Kathy Davis where you guys talked about publishing a book. My zone of genius is, I think your listeners I could add value to it. Would you like to have a conversation? And as you're on podcasts, attach those links, because then they can hear you speak. They get a vibe of how you flow, all of those things, and then they will invite you on. So start to build your archives, if you will, so that you can share it with the host. But that's where I would start. Apple, type in your topic, and then try to pick one of the newer podcast platforms. Write a lovely email, and you'll get on. You'll get on as a guest.
So you can tell if it's newer if it has fewer podcast recordings.
Yeah. If it's got 20 episodes, reach out to them. If like me, I have hundreds of episodes. I'm booking into June now for my guests because it's so popular. So I don't make an effort to look for guests. But for you guys, I would start with the smaller ones. Yeah.
Great idea. So I understand you have a gift for our audience today. Speaking of lead magnets.
I do. And you do have my link tree, Kath? You want me to put my link tree in, or?
Why don't you tell me what it is and I'll type it.
You know what? I'll put them in. So I'm going to do the free gift. Oops. Let me do this here.
And we'll also send this link out in our follow-up email that has a link to the recording that everyone gets.
So that is my free communication style assessment. Kind of important to know how you communicate, what your natural superpowers are, and you want to always lean into that. It will help you on the podcast. So if your host, like you could see, I fire fast, I have high energy. So if you're on my show, I want people to come with energy, right? And now you don't have to duplicate me, but you want to show up and honor my vibe, because people are listening because of my vibe. So if you're kind of quiet and very methodical, I'm not going to have you as a guest, because that's just not what my listeners want. So communication style assessment, you want to really understand, and you'll be listening to the hosts because it's their show. So you'll be able to discern what style they are, and then you could show up and kind of mirror them a little bit so their listeners will be engaged. And then underneath, I put my link tree. Great. You guys can email me or connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that's there. But I put that in so that you could see what Linktree can do for you. And you'll see all the things I've listed. My CSA is on the Linktree too, but I gave that as a separate link.
And we'll also include both of those links in that email that goes out. And well, Connie, it's been lovely. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here. And someone is going to be with us the first February 9th, that first Thursday in February. Amanda Bedell.
Oh, Amanda, she's my girl. Yep,
Amanda is
Pacific
also
Northwest.
going to be in your book that comes out at the end of February.
Yep.
So Amanda she calls herself a business chaos sorter. She offers a 5-step, simple to use process to bring clarity to business owners who want to write themselves bigger paychecks, take vacations without cash flow anxiety, and endless calls from staff. Well, I know I'm going to be there.
She's
Sounds
brilliant.
like a topic.
Yeah, you won't be disappointed. She's brilliant.
Yeah. That's February 9th. And I know she comes as a referral from Connie that we can count. There's going to be good content there. So
Excellent.
Connie, again, thank you so much for being here today. The recording will go out usually within the next 48 hours. And be watching for information about Connie's book that comes out the end of February. We'll be sharing that info too.
Okay. Yeah. And listen, if anybody has questions, just connect with me on the email, send me an email, and I'll help you any way I can, of course. Also, anybody who's friends of Kathy is a friend of mine. So she's stuck with me.
That's right.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, guests. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
A pleasure. Thanks.